friends, come on into my kitchen today while I do a pantry shuffle. I'll be taking products from the fridge and the freezer and canning them up so that I have room for a turkey and a ham. The holidays are coming. I need to make space. This 10-pound bag of carrots has been sitting in my fridge for a while. It takes up the perfect amount of space to replace it with a ham. Carrots have to be pressure canned, so come join me. Actually, before I do the carrots, I'm going to get the tomatoes out of the freezer because they can go into a bowl and start defrosting. Give me a second. I thought I only had 4 bags of tomatoes. Turns out I have 5. At 5 to 5.5 pounds each, that's about 25 to 30 pounds of tomatoes. That's perfect for, this much is perfect for putting a turkey in my freezer, and this other bag will make room for a couple of pies. Or for us to buy some beef. So that's it. I'm going to set these out to defrost and get started on my process for the day. Today I'll be using my Presto Canner. This is the 0178 model, and it has a pressure gauge on top. I'll go through the details here. This is our pressure gauge. It tells us how many pounds per square inch we have. In my area I should get up to 11 pounds. When the canner is new, you would be using the gauge, and then every year you would send in the gauge to be calibrated. Because I'm in Canada, in Ontario, there is nowhere that I know of to get your gauge calibrated. So we switched at that point. After about a year, we switch over to a weight, and it comes with 3 pieces. This is the 5 pound, this is the 10, and then there's another weight that goes on it that brings it up to the 15 or higher. I don't need that. I just need the 10 pounds right now. So I'll be using that when the time is necessary. I got this was shipped to me by Presto. I got it from their website. So on our canner we have a few safety features. The lid locks into place. There are tabs all the way around the lid to keep the lid from blowing. Here at the front there is a locking mechanism so that once you lock it into place it's really securely locked, and when the pressure regulator, there's a metal piece here that I'll show you in a second that latches onto this, and when it goes up your lid's not going anywhere. So here is the piece on the outside. When the pressure builds, that goes up and it locks right in place on that piece of metal. This pressure canner also has a rubber blow valve, so if it really does get too much pressure and it's not going to explode, this valve will blow out of the top of it and you'll have steam for a few minutes, and then the steam will dissipate as the pressure is gone, and then it'll just be like a pot of boiling water. So you don't have to panic. All you have to do is back up and let the steam do its thing and stay out of its way. It will become a pot of boiling water after just a few minutes. And then you can reach around and shut it off. When you go to engage the lid on this pot, there is a mark here that tells you how to close it, and that lines up with a mark on the handle. So it just settles in and locks in place. That's how those tabs hold it securely. I'm going to start off by peering through this hole towards the light and making sure that I can see light through there and our pressure valve is not clogged. That is this spout on the outside. I've already gone through and made sure my rubber gasket is secure and clean all the way around. Okay, I can see light perfectly through that. That's ready to use. When you're canning, you don't want to put your jars on the bottom of the pot. This tray came with the canner and it's got little feet on it so the jars don't sit on the bottom. Over here on the side, below this handle, there is a mark in the bottom that has a water level. You're not going to be able to see it from there, but it's there. You don't fill your pressure canner full when you're pressure canning. You only fill it to that line, and for me that takes about 3 liters of water. Now I've got to get back to my canning process. It's important to follow the instructions given to you by the manufacturer of the lids to get the best performance out of the lids. These lids are supposed to be sterilized before they're used. and stored in hot water. So here is my boiling water just off the boil. I'm going to cover these. These are 4 jars lids, and I'm just following the manufacturer's instructions. I'm going to set that to the back of the counter now, so so it's not going to get knocked over. The owner's manual that came with this canner says to put in 3 quarts or 3 liters of water until you reach the line at the bottom of the markings. And in this case, I was just talking about that. That for us, 3 quarts or 3 liters just perfectly meets it. I ordered this from Amazon. It's an extra plate for my canner so that I can stack my pint jars in my canner. I have my clean jars. They've just had a little bit of carrot in them. They are clean. I have my jar lifter. I have my gauge so I can tell how much headspace I have, and I can poke the air bubbles out, and I have a magnet to lift the lids out of the hot water. It's not necessary. You could use tongs to do that, but if you use tongs, you risk the chance of scratching the inside of your lid. I'm going to fill these up now with carrots. If you choose the raw pack method, which is what I'm doing right now, you have to pack the carrots in there as tight as you can. There is a cooked method where you can boil them on the stove and then pack them with hot water and all of that. I think that the raw pack is so much easier. I just pack these into the jar and then I put boiling water on them and can them. I think that if I was cooking them first, they might overcook and you'd have mushy carrots in the end. As it is, they're cooking for 25 minutes under pressure. I'm just giving them a little shake to get the carrots to settle in. Okay, so we want these packed in here. Tightly packed. I can do that. And you want to leave a 1-inch headspace. On our jars, this lowest rim will be 1 inch, and then you'll have a 1/2 inch, and then you'll have a 1/4 inch. There's my kettle boiled. 1 inch headspace. Just up to that collar, and that's all. Okay, my carrots are packed in the jars. I'm going to fill them with boiling water. If you don't have this fancy tool to go in here and knock the bubbles out or to measure with, you can use the rings on the jar like I just demonstrated, and a chopstick works great. A chopstick actually fits in smaller spaces than this green thing does, and this was just, we went to Thai Express and we grabbed an extra set of chopsticks while we were there. Does that mean I stole them? You might be able to see as I debubble some of these that the water level sinks. And I'm just going to have to top that up so that there is 1 inch of space at the top. The head space allows you to create the proper volume for the pressure. Okay, I can see with my experienced eye that we're good on the 1 inch head space. So 1 inch headspace will be this one, the deepest. I will set that on the rim, and it should go, I've got too much water in this one, and it should be just right. It should just touch. That one's also got too much water. This one, that one's okay. It's handy to have just a tablespoon to take out some water while you're doing this. That's one tool I always forget to put out. How is that? Better and better. Okay. I do have my lids sitting in a pan of water. And this is not acid or fatty or crumbly where there'd be stuff on the top of the jars. Like doing jelly or doing salsa, you would definitely want to, or stew, you would definitely want vinegar to clean the tops. But this process is to make sure there's no salt, which I don't choose to use salt. You could put 1/2 teaspoon of salt in each pint. You're checking to make sure there are no chips on the rim of the glass, and you're making sure that there is no food debris on the glass. Lids. These actually are sticking together. There we go. I'm just going to twist that down with my fingers. I'm not going to crank it with my hand. I'm just going to, if I can get the lid to line up. It's hot. There we go, it's lined up finally, and I'm just going to twist it with my fingers. If you twist it too tight, your lids will buckle, and if you don't twist it tight enough, the lids can actually float right off. The vibrations in the canner can loosen the ring the rest of the way, and it'll come right off. I've had both extremes. Okay. Now my jar lifter just fits around the top of the jar, and I'm going to put that in my canner. If you caught my pantry tour video that I just did recently, I'll put a link right here, but hang around, watch this video first. I sometimes can water. If the jars are in the canner and they're wobbly and tippy, I'll make sure that I put in an extra jar to give them some security so that they stand up nicely. You don't want your jars tipping over, because that can again wreck your seal and you lose your product. Okay, now I'm going to jar up these carrot sticks. And again, the same thing, you want to pack them in there. These carrot sticks can be used roasted next to your vegetables in a crock pot, or you know, a roast chicken, a roast beef, and they're ready to go. You don't have to stop and chop them at that time. If you're a person who uses a crock pot that you load up before you go to work in the morning, that's perfect. You open the can and it's got your liquid and your vegetable, and you just plop it in. It's already good to go. I'm creating this style for a specific recipe that my husband wants to have product for. He can give you the fancy name in French, but he said basically it means some carrots and some sausage, or some sausage and some carrots, or something like that. He'll tell you the name when we get to it. I don't know how many jars I'm going to get out of this. I just finished off that 10 pounds. It looks like I'm going to get 3. It doesn't matter what shape you cut your carrots, you're still going to do the 1-inch headspace. And I've got those below that shoulder, so they should be just fine. There's not enough here to do another jar. Okay, where's that boiling water now? We're going to repeat the process. Let's see what we can, are there bubbles in here? Yeah, these are not going to fit. I don't know what happened that shifted them, but they're not all going to fit. There we go. That's not going to fit. Okay, I'm going to put a little more water in this one, because I can see it's not up to the collar. It's not up, this one is, and this one is fine too. So that's that. I have to wipe the rims on these. Nine jars will fit perfectly in my canner. I will be able to put them on 2 levels, I think. Okay, they're starting to cool off a little. Okay, let me see what I can do. How many can I fit in there? Honestly, I forget if it's 8 or 9, so there's 6 in there now. Let's move these around a little. Snug those up. Snug those up. It is 9. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. And that works perfectly. If I had more pints of product to put in, or the half pint or quarter pints, I could put the tray in and then just build another layer on top. Today I don't have that. And these are pretty secure. They're not going to fall over in this situation. If that jar wasn't there, I would make that one a jar of water, and if it fell over, you know, it's to protect that. So I would put water in the center for that. Here we go. I'm just going to anchor my lid on, and I'm going to turn this on. Okay, so my lid is on and it's secure, and I can see it from where I'm going to be. Right now I'm going to bring this up to a boil, and I'm going to watch for steam to start coming out of this vent. Okay, we can see the steam is just starting to sputter out of there. We want to wait for it to flow out of there steady, and then we time that for 10 minutes. It's still on high right now. What that's doing is removing air from the canner and filling the space up with steam instead. That's pretty steady. I'm going to start a timer. I'll come back in 10 minutes and I'll show you the next step. I didn't have my camera going at just this moment, but this piece here just popped up when it got to a certain pressure. So that means that there is pressure building inside the pot. You should be able to see the steam passing out of that. The timer's gone off and I have to put my weight on. This is quite simple, but if you're nervous about it, you could use tongs to handle the weight. The weight is a little small. I'm just going to come in behind so there's no steam on me and drop it in place. Now I'm going to let this pressure build. You can see the dial gauge is actually starting to move already. Once it gets to about 6 or 7, I'll start to turn the heat down a little bit. Right now it is on high. See, that dial gauge is still climbing. It's up to almost 5 now. Okay, that has been about 3 minutes, and it's gone from 0 to 7 in 3 minutes. I'm going to turn that down a little bit now. I'm turning it from a high of 9 down to, let's go 7. That's getting up there to 8 or 9. It's only been another minute. I'm going to give it 1 more minute, then I'm going to turn the heat down to 5. Okay, we're getting pretty close to our pressure. I'm going to turn that down to about 5 or medium on my dial here. If I was using the dial gauge, I would just go to that 11 mark, which is just an additional black mark next to that 10. And I would use that instead of the weight. It looks like I'm actually losing a little bit of pressure right now. It's faltering back and forth. I'll wait for it and see what happens. Just because I have experience with this, I know I can usually set my heat around 3.5 or 4, and it's just fine. Right now I'm just have to wait for it. It's very subtle, but I can see that weight starting to jiggle just a tiny bit. We're not up to full pressure yet. When it's really jiggling, you'll know it. If you're using the weight, you shouldn't rely on the gauge at all. I can still, my dial gauge still works, so I can use both right now, but I'm going to rely on the weight, not on the dial. Oh, can you hear it hissing? That jiggle is going to happen very soon. And you can see that the dial gauge is approaching 11, but we're not using that as our tool. Here it comes. There we go. Do you see it rocking? And that's it. My dial gauge shows us that we're just about 11 pounds, and my weight is going. Because I'm relying on the weight, I need to recognize that sound. Once that has established and it's got a steady rock going, I can set my timer for 25 minutes because that's how long these have to cook. It's already taken 10 minutes since I put the weight on it. So those carrots have been in there for 20 minutes already. Okay, I'm going to set my timer. Now that this has established itself and it's definitely rocking, I can touch down that heat just the tiniest bit. It's on 5 and I normally can get 3.5 or 4, so I'm just going to play around with that, but I have to maintain that rocking. I don't want that to go away. If that goes away, if it stops rocking and you lose some of your pressure, you have to start your timer again and cook your product longer. So I just want to touch this down a tiny bit. This rocking is supposed to be at a slow rocking and it's getting pretty quick. I'm going to just touch it down a little. Okay, and I'm going to touch that temperature down slowly, because if you change temperatures or pressure too drastically, it can cause siphoning in your jars and you can have fluid come out of your jars and you'll end up with product in your water. We don't want that. I have touched that down to 4.5. I'm going to give it a few minutes and then I'll touch it down to 4. Okay, I've turned that down to 4. If you can see on the dial gauge, it's actually above the 11, and that won't hurt your product at all, but it's not necessary. See that? It is slowed down considerably, but we're still above the 10 pounds. It's still going. I'm not going to adjust the temperature anymore. I'm going to leave it at that for now. Okay, we're done the 25 minutes. My timer just went off. There's a couple of ways I can handle this. First of all, we're going to shut off the heat. You can remove your pot from the burner, lift it up, don't drag it because it'll scratch your stove top or it could snag on something. Or you can just leave it right here and let it cool off on its own. It's probably too heavy for me to lift with 3 liters of water and 9 jars and 9 jars full of carrots, so that's 18 cups of carrots. It's a bit too much for me to be hoisting around. So I'm just going to leave it there and let it cool off on its own. You don't remove the pressure plug because it will blast steam everywhere and there's a risk of burning, but it will also change the pressure inside the canner so drastically that it will cause siphoning. The liquid will come out of your jars. As you can see, it's already stopped jiggling, and we're going to wait for this to come down to 0, and that will stop hissing as well. So I probably have 20 or 30 minutes, and then I'll come back. Okay, this has been sitting for more than half an hour. The pressure is all off. The gauge is reading 0, and nothing is coming out of the vent. So let's open that. And now I'm going to let that sit for 10 more minutes. That's just to help prevent a dramatic temperature shift again. I can hear the lids pinging from across the room, so I think this is cooling off perfectly. I removed the lid safely, and I'm going to use my jar lifter. I'm going to lift those jars straight out as much as I can. I do have an overhead range hood here in the way, but you can see they're good to go. Sometimes when, oh, that one floated. Can you see how much that's floating? But you might also be able to see they're still boiling. The carrots shrunk as they cooked, so the fluid has displaced, and they float a little. This one is still boiling in the jar. So that's it for today's video. Thanks for hanging out with me today, guys. Be sure to hit that like button and share and comment. That helps YouTube just to see me a little bit more. And subscribe. Share it with a friend who might subscribe. That helps my channel grow. See you next time, guys.